Okay, so welcome to another video. Today we are going to discuss about the unit 2. Okay, and first of all, sorry for the late video. I was quite busy because of this parental training and stuff, and not just that, there were so many things going on. So finally I'm back, and today we are going to cover unit 2 of psychometrics. Okay, so let's do it. We are not going to waste a lot of time. So let's talk about, let me change the color. Okay, so let's talk about the test construction. How do we construct a test? That's what we are going to talk about today. A practical model. Okay, it's a practical model for test development. Okay, so to construct a test, okay, there are different types of approaches. Okay, there are different approaches to test construction. There is rational approach, there is empirical approach, there is factor analytic and item analytic approach. Okay, so we are going to talk about each of these. So what is rational approach? Okay, what is rational approach? So in rational approach, what we do is, first we will know about the theory. Okay, for example, if I have to create a questionnaires or items, okay, questionnaires or items of, suppose I'm going to measure anxiety, what I will do in rational approaches, I will study about anxiety. Okay, maybe I'll read research paper, maybe I will look for literatures regarding anxiety, and then after knowing the theory, what we'll do is we'll create questionnaires. Okay, we'll create questionnaires or items, and then we'll give it to people. Okay, they will fill it up, and that's all. Okay, that's what rational approach is. We will use theory. Theory will guide us into making those questionnaires. Okay, that is what rational approach is. You start with a theory about what you want to measure. The theory guides what question you ask. Okay, example, if you are creating a test for depression, you would start with a theory of what depression is. Okay, symptom, causes, etc. And this is the example, projectile test. Okay, projectile test like this ink blot test are based on psychoanalytic theory. So this test is based on psychoanalytic theory. I don't know what it measures. I guess it's schizophrenia or schizophrenia. It's going to measure that. And how this test developed? It was developed on it was based on psychoanalytic theory. Okay, unstructured question and subjective answers. Okay, this is the characteristics of projectile test. Okay, so what are the advantages, okay, of rational or theoretical approach? It has a strong connection to the theory. Okay, what are we going to do? We are going to create a question through theory. Okay, suppose we are learning about anxiety, we will learn the theory of anxiety, okay, through existing literatures, and then we'll create questionnaires according to it, according to the theory. What are the limitations? That itself is a limitation. Depends on the quality of theory, may not be culturally applicable. So if your theory isn't good, which means directly that your questionnaires or your items is not going to be good. So it depends on the quality of theory. Okay, if it is degraded, your questionnaires will also not be good. So, and the next thing is, it may not be culturally applicable because these theories, most of the theories are Western centric. Okay, they are centric towards developed, industrialized West societies. Okay, what about the other culture? What about developing, not very industrialized, and the Eastern culture? What about those cultures? Okay, there are different kinds of culture, and most of the theories are made in specific culture. There are lots of theory, right? So if we create a questionnaire just looking at theory, that may not be culturally equivalent, or that may not be able to have cultural sensitivity. So that is the disadvantages. So this is what theoretical approach is. We start with theory, we create questionnaires based on the theory. If theory is good, questionnaires is good. If theory is bad, questionnaire is bad. Okay, that's it for theoretical approach. Let's talk about the another approach, which is empirical or criterion related approach. For example, you are measuring anxiety. What you'll do is, first you will have a general idea about anxiety. Okay, then you will create lots of questionnaires. Okay, lots of questionnaires or items. Okay, now what you'll do is, you will ask anxious as well as non-anxious people to fill this questionnaire. And the items or questionnaires, the anxious people check most of the time. If a lot of anxious people check that question, which means that questionnaire is good to check for anxiety. If they don't, then that question is not very good to check for anxiety. Similarly, if non-anxious individual, if they check for item, that means that item is not quite suitable to check for anxiety. Whereas people who doesn't have anxiety does not check for the questionnaires, which means it may be able to check for anxiety. Are you getting it? That's how I understand. Okay, it's not based on theory. Okay, we'll create questionnaires. Okay, and we will give it to two separate groups, and we'll try to see how suitable it is. If we are measuring anxiety, then anxious people should be able to, what do you say? I don't know that typical word, but should check for that questionnaire. If they don't, then that's not quite suitable to check for anxiety. That's how we develop this, this questionnaires or this scale. Okay, or that's how we create our test. In empirical approach, we don't use theory. What we use then? We use data. Okay, so what it is, you focus on how well test questionnaire predict something specific. You don't worry as much about why they work. So we know if we are measuring anxiety, and if people check the questionnaires and if they have anxiety, so that is more suitable to check for anxiety, right? That's better questionnaire to measure anxiety. But we don't know how it works. We know it works. Okay, this is a right kind of questionnaire to measure anxiety, but we don't know why it's working. That is what empirical or criterion based approach is. Example, if you are creating a test to predict job success, you'd find question that people who are already successful answer differently from those who aren't. Similarly to the example of anxiety, advantages, good for prediction, it's good to predict. Okay, limitation, you may not be clear why the question works. Obviously, why it works, we don't know. It works, we know. May not generalize to other situations, so it may only work, or it will only work in the context of anxiety. If we are making such questionnaires, or in other like if we are predicting job success, it may only be used for a specific thing. We may not generalize to other situation. Now that is what empirical approach is. Today, I don't know, I am so what do you say, hurried, or I don't know what's the right word, but it's quite hard. You can see I'm just way hyperactive, and I'm not thinking a lot, and I'm just making a video. In my mind, I have to make a video, and I have to do it as quickly as possible. So I'm not able to explain it quite well, I know that, but this is what it is. Now we don't have much time, so you'll get a general understanding and you can study more. Okay, I'll provide you notes as well. So let's talk about factor analytic approach. What is factor analytic approach? Okay, let me think of example. Just I need some seconds. I need to think. Okay, factor analytic approach. Okay, it's so easy. Let me erase it. What is factor analytic approach? It's basically what we did in our practical. Okay, factor analytic approach is all about what we did in our practical. So what we did, so in factor analytic approach, what we do is we use statistical method. Okay, now what is that? Before this, we used stats only to know about data. Okay, only to know about data. Okay, only to know we get some data. Okay, to interpret it, to understand it, we use statistics. Whereas here we are using statistics to create an scale, create an test. Okay, so from here the stats begin. Okay, so what we do in factor analytic approach is, it's so hard to explain me today. I don't know why. I'm so energized that it's hard for me to even think properly. Okay, what I need to know is what we did, okay, what we did is that we had a general idea. Let's say we are again measuring anxiety. We'll have a general idea, we'll create questionnaires, okay, and then we'll use a software like JASP. And what we'll do EFA, exploratory factor analysis. Okay, now connect it. This is what factor analysis is. So what happens? For example, I had a general idea about what anxiety is. So I created questionnaire 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 questionnaires. And I only know about the general idea of anxiety. And some of the questionnaire may contain questions related to depression. Some may contain questionnaires related to personality disorder. Some may contain questionnaires related to psychosis, okay, and some may have the questionnaire related to anxiety. Now, how can I know that which questionnaires will measure anxiety? Because there are different kinds of things, like the questionnaires is also about anxiety, also about depression, also about personality disorder. So what we do is we do factor analysis, and what factor analysis does is it separates or it categorizes items, okay. If those items are similar, it categorizes it, okay, it gives it in one group. For example, in this context, there will be questionnaires, and those questionnaires will be grouped under the name, under one factor, and that could be related to anxiety. And it will again group similar questions which may be based on depression. Again, similarly, it may group questions based on personality disorder. So now we know that these questionnaires which are grouped together is a right questionnaire to measure anxiety, and those questionnaires that are grouped under another factor that seems to be like for the depression, we have to remove it. Personality disorder, we have to remove it because it's not measuring anxiety. Are you getting it? So what we did is we categorized, okay, anxiety, depression, personality disorder, okay, and the questionnaires that measures anxiety is in one place, is in one factor, okay, factor 1, factor 2, factor 3, so it's in one factor. So all those questionnaires are passed, and it should be above 0.4 loading score, okay. So that is what we do. So factor analysis is more about what we did in JASP, EFA, exploratory factor analysis. We had lots of questionnaires, okay, and some of them got rejected because they did not reach above 0.4, and some of them got divided into different factors, okay, factor 1, factor 2. So for example, if I was trying to make a scale on resilience, okay, that was my scale. So that could be distinguished into two factors. One could be about cognitive resilience and one could be about emotional resilience. So what I'm trying to measure, okay, if I'm trying to measure the entire resilience, I'll keep the board factor, okay, and I'll reject those questionnaires that are not suitable, that does not relate to each other and does not come under one factor and it's below 0.4 loading. Those items are going to get rejected, and now I have good items that will measure resilience. But what if I only wanted to measure cognitive resilience? Then again, I'll only select factor 1 questions and I'll reject factor 2 questions as well, along with these other questions which were below 0.4. Now I have the perfect or good questions or items that will only measure cognitive resilience. So that is what factor analysis is all about. Okay, so it's a statistical method to find underlying factors or dimensions. Okay, dimensions. We can also say factor, we can also say dimension, and we can also say construct. Okay, you look at how test question group together. Okay, text question or items or questionnaires, those questions, how they group together. Okay, you might give a test with lots of personality questions and find that they cluster into groups like outgoing, anxiousness. Okay, there are personality and there are different kinds of personality. There are extrovert, introvert. So in factor analysis they will separate. Okay, questions that are related to extrovert, there are questions that are related to introvert. They'll just do that and helps understand the structure of what you are measuring. Okay, limitation requires large sample. Obviously, when we did our EFA, we required more than 60 plus participants, so requires lots of sample. Interpretation can be complex. Obviously, we have to go into JASP and do factor analysis and stuff, and that is the newer software. We can just imagine if it was done on the Excel sheet or anywhere else, it would be even more difficult. So what is the example? 16 PF personality inventory. It was made with factor analytic approach. So that's all about factor analysis approach. Let's talk about item analytic approach. Okay, it was about factor, it was about construct, it was about dimension. Item analytic is all about items. Okay, item means one item, two item, quotients. Item means quotients. What we do in item analytic approach is, we compare and we try to look for each item. Okay, we're gonna analyze each item, such as item 1, I feel anxious at social setting. Number 2, I feel, what do I feel? Okay, I feel, let's say, judged under social setting. This is one item, this is another item, this is one question, this is another question. What we do is we try to analyze each item. We try to compare between each item. Here we were looking at factors, so we are grouping items together. Here we are not just talking about grouping. Okay, we are talking about comparing between these items to each other. Okay, analyzing each items. So how does item analysis work? So first is item difficulty. This is something we need to keep in mind. Our items should not be so difficult that nobody understands it. Okay, and people don't respond to it correctly. We don't want it to be so difficult because that's not a right item. We don't want it to be so easy that we cannot even discriminate. Okay, we cannot even discriminate. What does that mean? For example, I'm measuring, let's say, anxiety. I should be able to differentiate between people having anxiety and not having anxiety. How can I make sure I have such questionnaires which can differentiate between people who have anxiety and who does not have anxiety? We can do it by making items not very difficult or not very easy. I should avoid questions such as I feel worried. Okay, now everyone may feel worried. Even the person with anxiety may feel worried, and even the person without anxiety, they will get worried. Is this a right question? No, it's just too easy, so it's not going to differentiate. So what kind of question we want? We want questions such as, maybe if I am measuring social anxiety, I feel anxious in social situation. Now this is a right question. Why? Because people with social anxiety is going to check it. Okay, people without social anxiety is not going to check it because they don't feel anxious in social situation a lot, right? So they will not check it. So now this is a right questionnaire. So we are analyzing each of these item to see that it should not be very difficult. Okay, very difficult, like you don't even understand the question, or it should not be so easy that you cannot even distinguish. Okay, you cannot even distinguish between two groups. Like it should not be like even the person with social anxiety, even the person without social anxiety just check that question. We don't want it because that's not going to measure social anxiety properly. We should be able to discriminate. People with anxiety should check it, people without anxiety should not, or vice versa. Are you getting it? Each item should be of mixed or medium difficulty level, we can say, right? The item should have both difficult as well as not not so easy or very difficult. What I'm trying to say, it should not be very difficult, it should not be very easy, it should be somewhere in between. We should have this mix of both very difficult and very easy, and we also want it to be able to differentiate. Okay, so let's study, let's what do you say, let's read it out. What is it? You carefully examine each question, which is also called as item, on the test to see how well it works. Absolutely. So there are key concepts. One is item difficulty. How many people get the question right? Okay, that's what we already talked about. Okay, item discrimination. How well the question separates high and low scores. That's also we want. Item response theory. Okay, what is it? A modern approach that looks at the relationship between ability and the probability of getting a question right. So this is something that I just forgot. Okay, I'll explain it later. Okay, I'll maybe make a different video about it. There is something about ability and probability. Okay, I'll get into it deeper. I don't want to do it right now. So let's talk about advanced. This is what basic is about item analytic approach. Okay, this is a new kind of thing that emerged, and this is what we use today. It's a modern approach. Okay, I'm going to talk about it. These are the basics. Okay, this is there. Okay, even it's a modern approach, we are going to make sure about item difficulty and item discrimination, and about item response theory I'm going to talk it again. So what are the advantages? Help create tests that are reliable, valid. Okay, limitation requires large sample. Okay, again in item analytic approach we require large samples, and it is done through stats. Okay, it's done to statistics and software like JSP and other SPSS, I guess. Okay, so we talked about test construction. How do we construct a test? Okay, how do we create the scales that we created? Okay, we created scales by factor analytic approach. Also we used some kind of theory as well. Okay, because we have written that in manual that we studied some theory, we studied like we did the literature review. Okay, so that literature review is about theoretical approach, so it was kind of mix of these two approach. Okay, we did it, so we know practically what is factor analysis, and I talked about what empirical based approach is. Okay, this we also did it kind of practically. Okay, we mixed this both. And about item analytic, this is what it is that I just explained. Okay, now let's talk about quality standard for test development. Good tests need to meet certain standards. Okay, technical properties, psychometric foundation, which means it should be scientific, objective. Okay, so it should have sound scientific principles. Okay, standardization, everyone takes the test on the same condition. Okay, everyone takes under the same condition. They should be provided similar questionnaires under same condition. That's it should be standard. It should be reliable and valid, and we already talked about reliability and validity in unit 1. Go check that video. I'm not going to do it again, it's going to consume time. Again, I also talked about norms, I also talked about item analysis. Okay, and cultural adaptation, making sure tests are fair across different cultures. Okay, this is something that we should keep in mind, so that the test should be of a good quality. Now let's talk about the part 3 from unit 2, which is about a process based model of test development. Okay, test development, there is a process. Let's talk about that process. Okay, first is identify the concept. Now how do you study? It's like how we created our skill. What we did first? Okay, identify the concept, figure out what you want to measure and why. What do you want to measure? I wanted to measure resilience. Why? Because I was interested. Okay, review existing tools. Okay, I did that. I checked for scales of resilience that already exist, right? See if there are already tests that measure the same thing. Okay, I also did literature review. Okay, again I also did literature review. Okay, I did not do that. I went to ChatGPT and I asked it to write it down, but in manual I've written that I've done literature review. Okay, so actually we have to do literature review, and that's what we do. Then what we do, we write questionnaires. Now after knowing that I'm going to measure resilience, after studying, okay, then what I'll do, I'll create questionnaires. 1, 2, 3, 4, I created 30 questionnaires. Then we'll do pilot testing. Then we'll create a Google form, or we will print it out and we'll give it to people to respond to it. That is pilot testing. Then we will check for reliability and validity, check if test is consistent and what is supposed to. Then we'll create a norm. Okay, we also created norm G square. Okay, we also create sum, and then we compare it, right? Then about norm, I've already talked about it in first unit. Go check that video. Then what we'll do, we'll create a manual. We'll do a manual or report. Okay, and how is manual report created? Preliminary steps. Okay, what are those? Defining characteristics, research, target population and sample, content development, item selection, characteristics of item, item source, forms, review and edit, standardization, administration instruction, establishing norms, uniformity. These all we did it, making a manual. Publication, test, manual, reliability and validity, test, revision. Okay, we haven't done test revision. Okay, so after we have selected items, we again have to go and again give it to people again, and they will fill it out and we'll check. Okay, we'll do pilot testing again, then we'll do specialist evaluation, we'll create norm, then it will be iterative revision. Okay, and lastly we need to make sure about cross-cultural adaptation. Okay, so if we are measuring a particular culture, then we should be able to make that skill appropriate to that culture. Okay, whether through translation, synthesis, expert evaluation, target population evaluation, back translation, pilot study, factorial structure and evaluation. This is something that we are going to talk again at the last unit as well. So I think that's it. Okay, I got kind of tired and I don't know why I'm rushing so much. We have a limited time, so we have to complete it. Okay, my aim is at least I'll complete psychometrics. We still have 3 units, so that's it. You need to complete it. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful night or day if you are watching at day. And sorry for my broken English. I don't know, I'm not that, I don't know what to say. I just want to say thank you for watching, and I hope that this video has been or will be some help to you, at least to know what's there in syllabus. I don't know you understood or not. You can comment, you can interact, you can like, you can talk more about it. It would be fun. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day. Peace. Bye. Okay, so let's talk about let's talk about item response theory. So what is item response theory? It a modern approach, okay, that looks at the relationship between ability and probability. Okay, relationship between what? Ability and probability of getting a question right. So for example, if we are talking about anxiety, so there are different anxiety: high anxiety, low anxiety and moderate anxiety. So what does item response theory does? It looks at the relationship first, and not just relationship, it's also going to predict. Okay, it's also going to predict whether, so this is an item, whether people with high anxiety will check for this question or not, people with medium anxiety will check for this question or not, or people with low anxiety will check it or not. It's not just going to know about the relationship, high anxiety, medium anxiety or low anxiety in the context of anxiety, in the context of the ability. We are talking about anxiety. Okay, these are also the abilities. We are not just going to understand the relationships, but we are also going to predict. Okay, so let's read it out. It looks at the relationship between ability and the probability, okay, of getting a questions right. So what does it actually do? It has been creating a specific kind of questions. Suppose you are targeting to make an item for moderate anxiety. So item response theory helps you do that, okay, because it helps you to understand the relationship as well as it helps you to understand or predict what's going to happen. So if there is an item, you already know that people with moderate anxiety may check it. Okay, so you will know about relationship as well as the probability of getting a question right. That's how I understood. I don't know you understood or not. You can check YouTube obviously if you don't. So that's all about item response theory. Thank you.